got cut off again, but what I was saying is hopefully in this new Trump administration, like they were attempting in the Obama administration, they could tackle occupational licensing reform and really get the ball moving in that aspect and free up our markets, free up some opportunities for our workers and for our businesses and for consumers. So far, I'm optimistic on that part, but I do have some doubts because in the first part of his administration, that is Trump, not much was done in this regard. So hopefully in this term he could put the money where the mouth is, so the saying goes, and really get the ball moving. This is a statement from the Maine Contractors Board, and I figured I would give this to the viewers. And this is just showing that Maine indeed does not have licensing for contractors. And this is their state pamphlet. Contractors are not licensed. Buyer beware. While there are a great many competent, ethical home contractors in Maine, it is up to you, the consumer, to find one. Home contractors are not licensed or regulated by the state of Maine. That old saying, buyer beware, applies. You should also keep in mind that the lack of state licensing allows the worst contractors to compete for your business alongside the best. The Attorney General's Consumer Mediation Program ranks home contractors among the top 3 most complained about businesses every year. All contractors must include this statement with any home construction contract valued at more than $3,000, and only a third of the down payment is allowed to be accepted. So that is from Maine, and that's just saying there is no licensing, but you do have to provide this statement on all your contracts. It would be a good habit to just provide it in general, but on your contracts over $3,000 to let the consumer know, hey, this is at your own risk. Buyer beware. So that's pretty nice there. I mean, that sounds like they got a good system in Maine. I mean, I haven't heard of any bad building or associate Maine with being a bad, shoddy construction state. I mean, if anything, I hold it to a high standard, and that probably surprises some of our viewers, knowing that there is no licensing in Maine. So obviously, if states and markets and consumers and housing could be built just fine in many of these states and in Maine, it could be done nationwide, and many of these states could take a lesson or get some opinion on that matter from these states. And again, I have brought up this matter to the California Contractors Board. Hopefully they took the matter serious. There's another matter I wanted to bring up, and besides the issues with licensing in our country and the negative effects it has on economic liberty, freedom, in India, there was actually a similar issue that we're having now with overregulation and occupational licensing. And there they call it the license Raj, or the permit Raj, or in other words, license rule. So like we have here, to where many states are associated with red tape, anti-business, high taxes, heavy restriction, India at a time was just like this. And just to start a business, get a car, get a license, it was extremely hard, and it had a huge negative impact on that economy. interested, you should watch a video on it. If you search up License Raj India on YouTube, you'll get some information on it. It's pretty interesting. We could learn a lesson from that, especially since they are a 3 times larger population and economy. We could learn some lessons on how free markets and fair competition have a role for consumers in the country. Another issue with licensing, and this kind of made me laugh because this was pretty recently, was kind of the unintended consequences. There's a study called At What Cost by the Institute for Justice, and they're a nonprofit organization dedicated to reforming licensing, and they're a pretty big institution. They've been pretty successful at reforming licensing. But they talk about the Cobra effect, which is kind of the law of unintended consequences. You do something and you accidentally make it worse. So with licensing, besides all the negative effects on opportunity and costs and businesses leaving states, that this one was a pretty unintended consequence, I'm sure. And it's pretty funny. A younger man in New York, for some reason or another, I'm sure because licensing is pretty difficult to get, and as a cosmetologist, his girlfriend wanted a license, and for some reason or not, she couldn't receive it. She couldn't pass the test. So obviously, not to give up on a dream or pursuit of happiness, some would say, this guy dressed up as his girlfriend and attempted to take the test, the licensing test, to get her cosmetologist license. So I thought that was pretty hilarious, and also kind of a moment that kind of shows the need for licensing reform, because these are unintended consequences that it has. If people were allowed to work, we wouldn't have men dressing up as their girlfriend to take tests, So, and in this country of freedom and liberty, equal opportunity, it's not a hard argument that anyone should be having, especially in my opinion. It's that I can't believe it moment that we're really having this conversation, but it's important. And hopefully state policymakers come to notice the importance of free markets, free market choice, and competitive economies, even if that means having a market, an economy, or states where licensing is voluntary. Because even if there is no licensing or licensing is voluntary, consumers still have that choice, if they want to go with this guy or that guy. They still have, in Vermont, the governor, he was making statements against the new proposal for licensing on contractors in that state. And he was saying, there's already tools in the toolbox. We already have existing platforms, existing methods. We have consumer guidelines in the attorney generals that could be used whenever. So it's Angie's List, word of mouth referrals. So if I need a project done, I'm going to go to one of my good friends and ask, hey, do you know a good guy? And from there, I'll keep going until I have a handful of selections I could choose. And that's consumer protection without licensing. And that's how many of these states, especially Maine, Vermont, that's how they operate. You have choice, but it's up to you. So I think that's all I have to discuss licensing reform in the construction industry. this just doesn't go for construction. This goes for many, many industries. There should be reform on many, many industries. Especially, I would say, the lower income trades like barbering, cosmetology, horseshoeing, blacksmith, construction, all this could be done without licensing. So, figured I would just give my 2 cents in my opinion, and hopefully lend my aid to turn the tide on restrictive licensing and free up the markets, give some more freedom to the workers so they could pursue and innovate the way they can and what's best for our country. So another issue, I mean, besides negative effects, is our country is professed to be one of the freest and with the most opportunity, but with the growth of licensing, that's generally not going to be the case, and it isn't the case because so much of what our people do has to require government permission. We can't, there is no freedom in that then. So we need to turn the tide and be the leaders in that aspect. Our licensing, another issue. I mean, it's not a big issue, but in France, they used to have, they don't anymore, they have free markets where if you don't want a license, you don't need it, which is nice. Like the rest of Europe. They used to have a licensing system to where, kind of like California, you would have to apprentice for 4 years, and then you would be required, in order for you to start a business and go out on your own, you would have to meet the criteria. So you would have to prove your 4 years of experience, and then you would have to take a test. And if you passed the test and were approved by the board, they would grant you your rights as a craftsman to work wherever in France. And what was cool about that system, it wasn't cool. A lot of people really didn't like that system, and they eliminated it for about almost 100 years, just because it was anti-liberty in their opinion. But once you got your license, they gave you a staff, which was kind of like a wooden gilded staff that was crafted by other craftsmen that received their license or certification, that would have your insignia of your industry. So if you're a blacksmith, it would have a blacksmith logo and your name on it. So it was kind of like a walking stick, but it was pretty cool, because after all your efforts or your contribution, you earn something, you receive something back. So you had something to show for it, which was nice. Here in California, it doesn't bother me, but for all our years of experience and 2 tests, we got this. We got a piece of plastic. So, it's not the French staff. It's just a piece of plastic. Not that a staff makes anyone a better craftsman, but it's certainly a cool achievement that I'm sure, had we something like this, we would appreciate a little bit more. So, in that regard, since I would say, staunchly opposed to licensing and our current licensing system, and all the efforts I've made to try and reform and get the board state to reform those licensing laws. Besides this video, educating viewers and giving some insights on the laws and efforts needed to reform them, this is my state license, because I'm a licensed contractor in the state of California, and I was able to receive my license fairly easy. I wouldn't say easy, but it was certainly a complicated process. And what bothered me the most is when I was looking to the other states to see how they're faring in this industry and how well they're doing, they didn't have this licensing system like we have in California. So you can't compare yourself or your industry to the other. And it's a two-tiered kind of double standard system, and that needs to go. If we're gonna have a United States, we should be united. We shouldn't be divided, in my opinion. So I will hold my license while I have it, but the board, the state of California, is raising the costs and insurances on contractors in the coming years. And these aren't just $100 annual fees. These are workmen's compensation policies, to where you're paying thousands and thousands of dollars now each year, and you're required to by law. So many of these costs and regulations are going to push many of our talented contractors out of the state, out of business, or keep many from coming to our state and innovating and benefiting our people. So we need to turn the tide on that and level the playing field for our contractors, so we could start getting to work. This is my saying. I haven't said it to the board, but the job's hard enough as it is at times. We don't need the states, the boards, or the government to make it harder. I'm sure everyone in this industry could agree with me on that part. Hard enough as is. We don't need you to make it harder. So if we can make it easier, everyone will win and everyone will benefit. So this is my license. I mean, this is not the exact license. This is a copy of my license. So in honor and effort to try and get licensing reformed for the construction industry, and for all the workers and contractors who know what I'm talking about and have been negatively affected by licensing and by licensing laws, this is for you guys. Freedom. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully we could get our markets free, allow workers to work regardless of a license or not, and place our country back on the title and leader of being the most free country with the most opportunity. Thank you.